Hi everyone, good morning. Just make sure you guys can hear me. Okay, so sorry, that was just a really big spot and I had to focus. I put this template on SPY just to kind of see, but okay, let's go back to ES here. 6788 is obviously huge. It stalled right at the top of the zone here. They did get an 88 entry. I did figure that we'd probably get the biggest pullback around the 5.8 to 6.6 and around the 8.8 to 7.781 area, which happened to be the case. So far that's about 18 points reduction here that we saw. So close to like that 6807 area. I figured that there was another small reduction here of like 13 points. So they could even stall closer to like 6801, 6699. I could see that though happening because that is a really big spot. And I'll explain why in just a second based on these kinds of intervals. But in between the two, I would imagine that there's probably some range back to 6820s. Do you see that? So let me just clear this all out because my chart is disgusting at this point. Hold on. Let me just clear this. Okay, these were the major reductions that we had. We had some up here off the 30s. I didn't really include these too much just because I knew that we would likely come back and retrace because we had like that 20-point range. But I don't know if you guys see this. Can you see this? Okay, let's just talk about the reductions really quickly because obviously market's moving fast. And if I fuck up any of my positions because of a stream, I'm going to be mad, okay? So see how they brought it back right here? This was another reason why I figured, okay, if they can bring this back to 6738, then we have really good odds of sustainment, okay? So these were kind of like the structural holds that I saw right here. These were off like the early reductions that we had. Big areas that we were looking for this morning was the 6720s, the 6736 to 38 to 44. So I knew if they came back and held that range, they would easily sustain. 5.8 was huge, so was 6.625. Okay, and then up here it's closer to the 7.7 area, I think we said 80, 81, kind of like this range, and then obviously 8.8. Okay, looking at this chart, those seem like pretty good ranges, correct? And the first rule that I had this morning when I took the long was we have to immediately come back over 6688. So we had no way of stalling this area here. This area here is too big to stall, especially off like that first range break. So, and plus we also opened in the zone at 6692, I think this morning. Yeah, 6692. And we hit lows at a really calculated spot in these areas down here. Okay, so let's turn off the volume. Do you see the structural holds right here off these intervals? So like this hold right here, especially when you take it and you measure off where that candle actually stalled. I don't know if you guys can see that, like off these candles right here. Do you see it? And I should probably make these different colors so it's easier to see, but okay. So this was a really good area to sustain. And remember how I said we do not want to come back beneath 6744. Okay, we definitely want to try holding this. You can also look at this as a channel hold, really. But the price action that we saw at 5.8 was really going to give us the idea on whether or not we're going to get continued breaks, along with the PA at 3.6 and 3.8. So price action at 3.6, 3.8. What do you guys notice here? These were the big spots. This is, I didn't cover anything at 3.6, 3.8 because when I saw the PA there, I was like, oh, they're taking this to 5.866. They're not going to stop there. So I figured it would kind of be stupid to cover here just because I already had taken 25% off that 2-2 break. So what do you guys notice about PA there? And then PA here between 5.8 and 6.6. These should be the big spots that we were looking for based on price action. Do those look accurate based on our math that we did this morning? Do these look like they were the big areas of overhead based on what we looked at this morning? I would say yes. Like, look at the sticks here. Like, that makes sense that these are very important areas, correct? And you guys can agree or disagree, but these are the spots that I figured would get pretty heavy or could expand us. I figured this area is not going to be as heavy as this area here, and that played out to be true. Remember, I said I'm going to give this about 10 minutes. I just want to see if they can clear 6.6 or if they're going to stall. Okay. What do you guys notice happen off like the 10-minute marks here? They stalled a little bit. Do you see that? Look, right as soon as they hit that 10-minute mark, they reduced range, came back down a bit. Okay, so I knew that I could start including this as a potential reduction in range, correct? At least for part of the session. This is where I started figuring, okay, they're reducing range a little bit, not too much. Okay, do you see that? About 19.5 points or so, meaning there could be a lot of overhead around 6, 7, 8, 6. Okay, nice. And then I also applied the same reduction we had earlier off these areas here, like off that 6.675 high, whatever it was, just to see what the increments align to. Okay, do you guys see the confluence here? So can I confirm that my 6.787.5 area is going to be a potential big overhead here based on my math, and then also based on the actual PA that's being reflected here? Yes. Okay, so this area is huge. If they can clear 6.788, this is what can get us a bigger break. And ideally, you'd want to do this by 1. Think about it. Look at the time. This isn't a coincidence. Look at the time. Look at the time. When would you want to clear 6.788 by? If they clear this before mid-session, how high does that increase your odds of expansions? So currently right now we're trading, we already had major breaks, but we already broke an 88 to 96 point break off open. 96 points is basically 3/4 of 128. Okay, can you guys write this down? I already wrote a bunch of shit down this morning, but that's 3/4 of 128 points. Okay, does that give you odds of getting 128 points if you're breaking before half of your session? You're breaking 75% of range. Yeah, that can heavily increase your odds. Okay, so how much range would that be if we were to break, let's say, 128 points or so to 130 points? Do you see that? Do you see how that could get us back to those 68.20s? And we're going to use the 96.75 since that's the amount that they actually stalled. So so 34, 33, 32. So maybe we get like a 32 to 33 point break here above this range. I would imagine that that's going to be around that 2122 area. Okay, so this is just for starters, and you guys can put notes in the Discord if you want, because these are really big areas. Okay, that's off opening range, off today's lows, which are really big spots for us. And I did mention these this morning and on the report. I didn't really get time yesterday because I had to get my car fixed. But okay, off the lows today, Do you see how they sustained over 34 points right here? I need you guys to see this, okay? Because this is how I knew that they were not going to bring this back down. And this is very important, especially in the first 15 to 30 minutes of the open, okay? Are you guys paying attention? Okay. If they really wanted to stall, they probably wouldn't have taken this out within the first 15. Okay, so they took this out in the first 15. Notice how so you can measure off lows, off open, off close, okay? Do you see the structural hold right here? Okay. And then this is off that opening range. This would have been off that high range. Okay, so off that high range, did they off the open, close, highs, lows of that low of day candle, this candle right here, did they sustain? This is the low of day candle. And let me start deleting some stuff so it's easier to see. Okay, did they sustain there? So basically sustaining 67.06, 07.08, which is the same thing as sustaining what? So that's a 33, 34 point range off lows, but what else is that? That's also sustaining the neutral zone, right? So that kind of adds some confluence there. They didn't quite take out the full zone, which was fine because I figured that there's some overhead around the 20s first, especially off opening range. Okay, so off opening range 6692. Do you see how they stalled 32 points right here? Okay. Do you see that? This is off opening stick. Are you guys paying attention? Because I'm only going to go over this once. Okay. I watch to see, okay, if they take out that opening stick high range. Okay, so do you see this? You see how they started stalling just a tiny bit right here? It wasn't much, but just a little tiny bit. Okay. Do you see that stall right there? Like they needed to break 3-1. So I just looked to see, okay, what kind of range differential did we have here then between here and here? It's about 4.75 points. So I figured, okay, well, if they come back and take out this area, we probably want to try breaking by like 4.75 points. Okay. Do you see that break right here on this 1027 stick? Are you guys actually listening? These are exact ranges, so this is how I know whether or not we're going to continue higher, okay? And then I looked to see if they break that 3.7 off that range there, and then the final range I looked at was this right here, which is about 7.5, okay? Do you see that? Where did they stall? Exactly there, correct? So what else was that 6738, 6736? So that was calculated based off actual highs and lows, but what else was that? Okay, so these are the differentials between the high or low. Should offset your lower high, okay? What else is that? That was 34 points off, or 44 points off opening range when they broke right here. So 9.2. This was that 3.6. I'm pretty sure. Okay, that was 44 points off open. Do you guys see that? I mentioned all this in the chat, but I'm just showing you guys so that you guys know. This was 44 points here, okay? Off open. What else was that? This was 66 points off lows, okay? There's a lot of confluence around this area here. Usually once you start breaking 68 points, that's when you can start getting some better structural breaks. And based on the actual math and range differentials that occurred between our 6706, 6707, 6708, and this lower high here, it made sense that that's a 68 point clearance break, and it's also the calculated 7.5 point break, because this area was calculated at 6738.25 or 0.5 or whatever it was. I think it was 0.25. Okay, so clearing that calculated range also clears that 68 points. Do you see that? Then they brought it back and they back tested 6731. Okay. They did breach a tiny bit, but do you see how they immediately negated that and they closed above? This was important. And it was important that when you do come back and take out this range, you also take out the 673.25, 6738.50, so on and so forth. So that was off lows, off opening range. Since we're still following along here, we had a lot of confluence at 5.8. 5.8 was 66 points from open. 60 was 68 points from open. Okay, so there was something that stood out to me here off the 5.8 break. And I don't know if you guys noticed it because no one said anything, but there was something that stood out here. Even though they did come back and take it out, and then they took out 6.6 and stalled 6.6. What do you guys notice about that break here? Right here. So something was a little bit different this time at this 5.8 break. So this is 66 points off open and 88 points off lows, okay? Are you guys still with me? Do you see the confluence here? So 88 points off lows is 6,758.50. Okay? What really stood out in this area here? So 6758, 6758.50, that was the big spot in between there. What stood out here for you guys? And this is why I knew, okay, maybe they do stall this area here. A little bit. Come on, you guys. I know you guys are not that unaware of price action. I marked it. What did they do at on that 6758 test? Did they take out 6758, 6758.50? On the first attempt. No, they didn't. On the first attempt, they didn't. They stalled 57, 57.50. Okay, so that was the first sign of, I wouldn't say weakness, because they still did take out, you know, like the full range, and they still brought it up quite a bit, but they had to have that immediate follow through, correct? So that was the immediate follow through stick right here. What else did they have here? And this is another reason why I was like, okay, well, yeah, and they had some liquidity. It wasn't the absolute best, okay? So I figured, and there was something that they did do, though, that was progressive. What did they do? So there's something that they did do and something that they didn't do. And this is what offset that risk. What did they do versus what they didn't do right here? So they stalled 6757.5 versus taking it to 5.8 or 5.850. So what did they do here? There was about a 50-cent reduction, right? Did they offset this at 6625? Yes. Okay. So when I saw that they did take out 66.25, I'm like, okay, I know it could get a bit volatile. I'll give it about 10 minutes to see what they do. And then I want to see if they come back and backtest this 6748 area. Okay, which they did. Okay. And again, it's kind of like the same thing that we were talking about earlier with the reductions in range, how like they kind of came back and then still managed to sustain these ranges in here. Okay, like above here. Do you see that? So I'm applying these reductions in range, guys, for higher lows. Does that make sense? And I find that they worked pretty good this morning, especially off open. So like off these opening highs, this is kind of where that stick clearance was. Do you see it right here? This is off that opening stick high. off open. They're close to like 21-ish points off open. Do you see that lower high? It's the same differential between open and lows. Okay? Off open to this range in here. That's why holding this area here was so important. Okay? Do you see that? This is off the opening stick. This is off opening. This is really tricky, but if you guys listen, you guys will learn a lot, okay? Pay attention to this. You see that opening stick right here? Okay, that's the opening. That's the high. Here's the low and close. Okay, that's when they lost 8-8. Okay, they had that immediate volatility, but like, look, off that low, eight six, whatever it is, 8675. Okay, area. Do you see how they held this area here? Off that 8725. Do you see how they held this area here? Okay, that was how we protected from going back to open and retesting lows. Does that make sense? Okay, and then when they came back and made that higher low, they're making it off the open. Do you see this? And then when they cleared, it was off that opening stick high. And then that's when I looked at the full range, not just the range from open. I looked at the full range from open to high, and then that's when we had that stick clearance right here. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. Do you see that? Right here, right here, right here. I don't usually go into deep detail like this, but it is a very important session, so I think understanding some of this, and go back and rewatch if you need to, but this was a very calculated move, like where they back tested, where they stalled, where they held, where they cleared, where they stalled, where they offset, where they back tested once again. Okay? And now we're kind of just ranging back into the zone. So next big spot was obviously 6781, 6770. Okay, that's a big area. Why is that a big area? Why is this a big area, guys? This was a 107-point range. This is 115, which is basically a third of 346. How many points in range are we getting very close to hitting here, guys? And we said that these are going to be very, very big areas for us this morning, especially off here. So these are the 88-point ranges off open, which they immediately took out. Okay, and then we were looking at 96-point ranges. And now they're sustaining 96-point ranges here. Do you see that? Before mid-session. Okay, now they're getting very close to hitting 107 points in range. Right? Do we have pretty good odds of getting 128 to 132 points today? Off lows. Off open. So basically between 6799, 6220s. Okay, I think so, because it's not even 12:30 yet. Obviously this area here is going to be pretty important because it is mid-ranges, so other mid-ranges are also like the 107, 115, etc., right? These are mid-ranges too. So if they want to stall and then keep it kind of just sideways all afternoon, they would, but I don't think that they would bring it that high if that was the case. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like they would have stalled probably closer to 5.8 or 6.6. Do you guys agree? So what kind of mid-ranges could we be working with? and I mentioned this morning, so please don't get this wrong. What kind of mid-ranges could we be working with? If they take out these mid-ranges here, which is the same thing as like taking out 115, okay? Same thing as taking out 107 points, okay? If they take out these mid-ranges before mid-session, what kind of mid-ranges are we working with? And it is a mid-range week, so I'm not surprised if they end up doing this. What kind of ranges would we be working with, potentially? And let's just recap. So on the daily, they took this down more than, this was a 132-point break right here, okay? But they sustained, I don't know if you guys saw that, 128 to 132 points off the highs to open, okay? This is around 110 points here, so it makes sense that they're doing around 110 points right here or 129 points right here, okay? What do you guys think that they could do? What would be a mid-range? And this is a mid-range too, 222. Remember what I said? If you don't hit 256 or 246, you either hit 22 to 32 points, 34 points beneath or above, like 220s, 230s, or you can hit like 270s, 280s, or if you don't hit 346, you can hit 320 or 370, 380, right? Those are mid-ranges. So what would be the median point in between here? Did we break down 256 points on the week? I'm going to give you guys two ways of looking at this. From weekly highs, did we break beneath 256 points? That was my max risk for the week, okay? Did we break beneath that? No. Okay, what's the difference in offset in range that we have from there to where we actually did hit? How many points, roughly? How many points? 26, right? 256 minus 230. Yeah, like roughly around there, okay? So, can that be recycled on upside for like mid-ranges? There's two ways you can look at this, okay? So, what, basically 128 or 132 plus 26. Okay. How many points would that give us? Around here, right? What's another way that you can look at this? And I said it this morning, so what would be the upper mid-range? If you break 128 to 132 points, what's next? And it would make sense for a mid-range session. And this whole week, I said, has been mid-range type of week. It's not a standard type of week. Even off like these, like... How many points are you still owed here? I think you guys are very bad at mid-range types of weeks or mid-range sessions. So I think just some feedback, guys. I think you guys should study more on like mid-ranges instead of like the standard offsets. But the thing is I gave you guys the answer this morning. Okay, so what did I say we have odds of doing today? If they expand the session, which means taking us to the zone by mid-session. And I said it very early this morning. Okay. What would we have to do? We obviously have to take out 6, 7, 8, 8 to negate major risk, right? But what do you have to do? What's the difference? What's the offset? And I said it this morning. Like, we could literally have odds of getting back to these areas if they bring us to the zone by mid-session. What's the zone? What area is the zone? What did I say they have to bring us back to? Hey? Okay, 8, 8. Okay, what areas did I say that we'd have to look at and see what time they do it at to see if we have odds of getting there? Here, okay? 6, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 01. Okay, by mid-session. What time is mid-session? Now, okay? 12. We got there before 12, which is good. Okay, what time is mid-session? The earlier they bring us there, the higher the odds, okay? So we got there before 12:30, 12:45, which means they could have odds of doing that, which means they could do what? You guys, what's the mid-range that they could bring us to if they're doing this before mid-session? What could they do at mid-session? This is where you guys have to pay really close attention. What would they have to do by mid-session? Clearly everyone forgot. Clearly everyone forgot. Oh my god. And I said, don't forget. Okay, no. No, 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 no. How many points is a mid-range above 128? That's my question. And you guys are failing to understand it from a math perspective, I think. What's the range that I said we could work with today? If they take out 128 to 132 points basically by mid-session, which they could do. They're getting super freaking close. It's not like they're that far off. No, that's a little too high. No, mid ranges, you guys. Mid. What's the mid range? Above 128. You don't just go from 128 to 190 or to 256. Yes, 150, 151. Okay. You know what the crazy thing is? This is what I said at 7:57 this morning. In case you guys forgot. Clearly you guys forgot. Okay? So that would be the big, what is 150, 151? Well, I just gave you guys the answer, but anyway. What is 150, 151? It's half of 256, 346. Okay? That makes sense because they're not really working in that type of range, okay? So even if you recycle the offset, you would add it to that. Another 20 points would be 150. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you guys understand that concept here? Those are the two ways that you can look at this. Okay, or you can look at it like this and recycle that range on upside, like between here. Half of like the 298 would be close to 150. Okay, from last week's lows, like Friday last week to this Friday, mid-range. Does that make sense? That's from highs. Because what would that give you an odd of doing? If you did do something like that. I actually didn't even check to see what half the range of this week is, but I'd imagine it's right where they're stalling. Yeah, it is. Okay, so 66% is around that 68.22. Okay, so they also took out 50% of the range then since before mid-session too, because that's around the 67.80s, which is interesting. I also looked at the fib ranges from here just to see from here, and from here. So I just wanted to see which area had the most overhead, and there was a lot in this range in here, and then quite a bit of support here, and then that makes sense that there would be the overhead there because that's also going to be the 128 point ranges up here in 132. Does that make sense? So I would expect there to be overhead here. Like that to me makes a lot of sense from a retracement level and then also from a range level. Okay, so if we did get mid-ranges, okay, do you see the alignment at core areas from there? That's also the 50-60% range, and then off open. So you're not wrong, whoever said 68 30s and 40s, but I was looking more for like the actual point metric. Okay, so that would be right. Like it would be around that 68 38, 68 44, which is basically what we had. Is that not the area that put us at risk in the first place? Do you guys remember that? Right? Because we never digested it. So it's kind of like, think about it from like a sense of like risk management, right? They finally digested it, but it was like a little too late, and then they failed it, brought it back down. That would be like a way of like trying to mitigate some of the risk by bringing it back there, I guess you could say. I think odds of getting all the way back to 6888 mass expansion scenario is probably limited based on what they're doing here right now. Like we obviously usually have to see how they react at mid-session first, but that kind of a range break would be more off actual session open. Okay, so like from a session opening range, 6762. Okay, do you see how that would make sense that they could do like 6? This is why I was saying they could do 66 or 6888 this area here, because technically that's like 128 to 132 points off the open and close. Okay, so off actual session open and close, they could do that, right? But I think that's going to be relative to where they bring it by what point in time, you guys think. And they constructed this like really nicely. Like you see how this open or this low is like right at that 128 to 132 mark here. That's not a coincidence. Like these were so calculated around that 7.3, 7.4, right? And that's where they started the week anyway, like around this range in here. That's if they want to fully like flatten. Where did my chart go? Oops. That's if they like fully wanted to flatten last week, basically. Last week's open, which so far I think that odd is kind of low, like getting all the way back here. But I feel like the 20s and 40s are pretty reasonable depending on what they do at this point. I think to get it to the 70s and 80s, since that's based off the session open, that would be relative to what they do between 115 and 130. Does that make sense to you guys? Whereas what they do around 12:30, 12:45, 1 o'clock, like before 1, is more relative to the 20s and 30s, because that's based off real-time lows, real-time open. Do you understand the logic behind that? Does that make sense? So at the very least, I think to even have an odd of that, you'd probably have to break 128 to 132 points by real-time session. So like between that 12:30 to 12:45 window, which is around 68, basically 6799 to 6805 area. Okay, that's off lows. Off open, you'd be looking at the 20s. Does that make sense? So if we get to these areas as early as mid-session, before, let's say 115, 130, then I would say that we have an odd of getting this type of range, like off the actual session. What about it doesn't make sense? These are your real-time lows, your real-time open, okay? In this area in here, whatever it was, 9.2. You're not going to have odds of session ranges if you're not even meeting these areas by mid real-time session, okay? Which is 12:45. But I see it's also your first time here, so. Are these areas also enough to be considered max range for the whole session today if they wanted to? In this area here? Like if they really didn't want to push 128 points? Yes, okay, it could be. I don't think it will be, because I don't think they would have stalled. I don't think they would have taken out 8.8 or sustained this 6.6 area right here. I think it would have been better if they sustained 7.4, 7.6, don't get me wrong. So like there still is, I've noticed some discrepancies starting to happen so far, like even here. Like I think if we would have held 7.7 would have been better, which is the same thing as if they, so there was some offsets here, which are now starting to be applicable up here, because we ideally want to break 9902. Does that make sense? Do you guys see this? Do you see the offsets and how it sets with 132 points? Okay, and we wanted to ideally sustain closer to 7.7 because that's 107 points off lows, or 88 points off these opening ranges, I guess closer to like 7.9. Yeah, like I guess around the 7.8, 7.9. So it's not bad, but I do think that we have a little bit of an offset here happening so far, around 7 to 8 points. And that's where this area could become a little bit heavy. What time is it? Okay, so ideally we'd want to start clearing by this window, correct? Yes, okay. Everyone's on the same page? What? Short-term bets? What? And there's no betting. This is calculated. Bets is crazy. Okay, so earliest point that they could try breaking this is around that 1236, 1238 window. So I do want to try tracking to see if they at least come back and retest these stick ranges around 6792, 6794. Okay. Obviously better odds are closer to this window in here. And this is really just to see if we have odds of expanding this afternoon, okay? How many think that will trigger the 67 or 6820s? I'll set a pull for 5 minutes. There's obviously odds that we can get higher range than that, but I feel like starting there is important. You know what's crazy is I went through all that detail about how every single one of these candlesticks, the difference in range, the calculations off this low, this high, this low, this open, this close, this open. And to be told that we're betting is crazy. Betting is insane. 1238 guys had some of the earliest odds of retesting the high range. So you don't necessarily have to retest highs. When you retest highs, you just have to retest the highest sticks. Okay, so these would be considered the highest sticks. So if we're looking at the actual high of day stick, these are the ranges we want to start triggering at this time. Does that make sense? 1238 retesting high of day range. This is really important to see that we get the potential break of that 6799, 6802 by 1245 and 1248. This is what's going to increase our odds of getting potentially the 6820s today, maybe even getting all the way through to 6840s. 1238 high of day retest. Are you guys tracking this? It's a very, very important time to try testing highs. We don't necessarily have to take them out, but at least retest them at this time of day. If they take it out, that's even better because that's going to set us up a lot nicer for that 1245. Can someone write that down in Discord, though, that 1238, just so I can, if I have time, I can go back and track that. That was, do you see how calculated that is, though? Do you see how the lows on that stick are the exact low range of this high of day stick? Okay, and then the closing price is the exact high. This is going to help us for these 1245 to 1248 odds. Oh. Yeah, I don't really know if odds is the right word, I guess. What else would I really say that? I usually just say calculated, but then it sounds kind of stupid. What are the exact levels, guys? We should write them down. That's why I cleared the chart, because what is the actual exact area here? I'm going to send them. Okay. Except we did say that they were working on what kind of increments? 96.75. So if that's the kind of increments they're working on, that means like 32.25 points. So 32.25 times 4, 129. We have better odds of getting 129 points, okay? So they might not fully, or at least that's where they could stall if they were to break. So there's a lot of overhead around 6798.50 and 6799, I would think. Okay, and that's off lows. Can someone write that? That those are off lows so that we don't get confused here. And quickly before mid-session starts. So those are off lows, okay? These are, so 129 has the most odds. These are off open. Okay. Hi. And if they start reducing range as early as now, then we know that we could potentially be limited, okay, for the second half of the session here. So how much range have they started reducing since 12:38? 9.25. This is why I don't like that extend thing. I measured too many candles. Okay, hold on. I just want to see where these equate to. So maybe when they take out that 6702 area, we have to try triggering 6804. 6805 area, okay? This area here, this is a calculated range off reductions. Okay, let's do another poll here. Thanks for the point contributions. How many think that they're going to clear 6799, 6802 by mid-session? So basically 12:45 to 1 p.m. I'll only set that for 3 minutes. Just Slipperman, you're always yes. You're always, I can always count on you for being a bull. I can't believe you covered your whole position before we even got to mid-session. Did you re-enter? Oh. Well, at least it gave a decent re-entry around the 7.2 to 7.8 area. All right, can we try getting some votes on that, please? So I can already tell by the range that they've reduced ahead of 12:45, they could be trying to limit things just a little bit. This is closer to like the 115 point intervals, which is half of 346 right here, by the way. That's kind of interesting that that's what they're bringing it to right here. Or a quarter, a third of 346. Wonder, oh, that's so you guys, that's so weird. What's the high of the week? Isn't that the high that we had when we stalled this week? Isn't it 6900, 6901 area? Yeah, 6900.5. Okay, that range off lows to the mid-session stick is 115 points, which is a third of 146, right? We already know that 115.5 is third. 346. Do you see this? That is so strange. So, and the lows on that stick. So these intervals here are basically aligned with those weekly highs. Do you see that? Off the mid-session. Okay, look at this. 116 points. So that could be implying odds of those retests, like 68.98 to 69.01, 69.02. And that doesn't necessarily mean for today, but in just in terms of odds in general. No, they haven't even taken out 128 points. Like, they're still stalling here. Also, let's go back to just our base strategy. What zone are we in right now? Let's delete everything since I have all the levels now. I can just add them on here. What zone are we in right now? Yeah, so bears could take some control here. You can already start to see some of the volatility coming in post 1245. See if they try turning it around off that 1248 to 1 o'clock window. Do we have any catalysts at 1 o'clock this afternoon? I haven't checked. I forgot. I know we had or have Fed speakers at like 2:30 and 3:20. I think we only have oil data. I don't think we have anything else. Do you guys see that reduction in range coming in? So why do you guys think they would do something like that at this time of day, especially off like these types of price points? And I could tell that was going to be the case just based on what they did at 4123 because it wasn't quite high enough. Well, the big areas to hold now for the session are going to obviously be that 5-8 range and this area here where they didn't hold the last time, close to like 7-8. And what did we say it was? 7-8, 7-7 area. This area here. Otherwise, I would say that that risk increases, and that's where we could start seeing the compression and range coming in before mid-session after stalling how many points off lows? And this is why I said 6, 7, 8, 8 is a pretty big area to at least take something off. Kind of noticed too that some of these wider range frames like off lows are also in line with Fed speakers this afternoon. And most of them are durational till session close though. Thanks, guys, for the subs this afternoon. I just want to see if the time ranges. That could leave it for some late odds. Okay. Can we note 2:44 and 3:52 p.m.? Just because I'm going to reset my chart, so I want to make sure that this is accurate. And then I'm also going to take note of 2:33 p.m. and 1:25. Okay. I just want to see too if these points in here hold, because these are in alignment with these lows. Does that make sense to you guys? Like these lows right here, okay, it would be in alignment with trying to sustain lows right here. Do you guys see that? It's the same idea. Okay, market's moving in about 66 to 68 minute intervals off these structures. Okay, it would be best to try to retrace range off of this stick here. So 1252, 53. I was already watching 54, but we have a cutoff close to 5.6. And I think these should all be just before 1. This is just to kind of save range so that they can get it back over 6, 7, 8, 8, hopefully before 125. Ideally before 1, but they'd need some really good sticks here for that to be the case. And this would be bringing it back over the 88-point range off open. Does that make sense? Guys, this here, these are 88-point ranges back off open. Okay, so 233, I'm just going to write these down, 244, 352, 125, and 1256. I'm going to mark 130 through 136 anyway, just since those are generic times that we look at, but we do have those Fed speakers this afternoon too, at 2:30 I think, so we'll watch this period anyway. And then what was it, 244, and then 12 or 352. It's kind of weird too because we don't usually have odds between then, but and that would make sense though, because his speech, I bet anything, is probably the median point here. So like 34 minutes is probably when he talks. Isn't that insane? Look, you guys, I swear the market is, nothing is ever a coincidence. So the midpoints between our 244 and 352 calculated points in time is around 3:18 p.m. So just before that Fed speaker. Interesting. Okay, so, and remember how I said we could use 66 to 68 minute intervals? If you do half range, then that means you could use around 32 to 34. Okay? That 34-minute interval, if they actually end up holding this low right here at 1251, is linked to that 124, 125. So these are pretty important times of day in terms of trying to sustain range. I was watching 1256 just to see if they start breaking this down back beneath that 7678 or if they try retracing back over 83. So far some volatility coming in. And I always watch like the first few minutes of the one, even though we don't have any auctions today, it's always good to watch 104, 108, 110, 112 p.m. Do you guys see how 56 is essentially the potential volatility stick if they wanted to come back and try retesting lows here before one? And by lows, I mean like this 1250 low. So let's start setting some alerts. Didn't realize these were... Where's SPX trading right now? So SPY's at 674. So then what is SPX 6788? Is that the same thing as, didn't we say that SPX is the same thing as ES 6820? So since 1238, after they retested highs and then stalled, we've had already 25.5 points in reduction, which is getting super close to being the exact same range that we had this morning, okay, which was 26.75. These are correlated to one another in terms of highs and lows, okay? Does that make sense? And likely becomes an area where we really want to try sustaining that 676850, just so we have odds of extending this range. Oh, so then it's more of like that neutral area. So what do you guys think so far, based on what they did between 1236, 1238, 1245, and 1 p.m.? Yeah, so in a very basic form, they basically stalled just beneath 128 points. They did, however, take out highs off 1238, which is important. They're trying to sustain that 6.6, 6.8. Remember how I said 5.8 is going to become a huge support range here this afternoon? Because technically speaking, they could bring it all the way back to this area here. This was the area that first failed us. And by failed, I mean it's because it's the first spot that they didn't take it out on the first test, which typically implies like some volatility. Something else that stands out is they stalled what zone? And why I would have preferred that they pushed it just a little bit first. We also had this tiny reduction here beneath 7.7 and 6.76, which is likely why they didn't really quite push 9.9, 9.8, 0.3, 0.2 up here. What else? I don't know why it keeps deleting that. I want to see if they try holding the 5.8 to 5.9 area, especially around that 104 to 107 window. Mostly to see if they can try retracting this and then immediately retracing back over 6.8, 7.1, 7.6 ahead of 125. And 115 is going to be the mid-session candle for the entire session from 9:30 till 5 p.m. Okay. From a risk perspective, would you want to go all the way back to 5.8, or would you want to try sustaining part of this range here? Maybe closer to like 6.2, 6.3, 6.1. From a range theory, I think these we said were the... Pretty sure these are the... Where was it? The 6.1 area is the 68 point range off open right here. And then this area down here was the 88 point range off lows. They've already taken it down 32 points from... There's that 32.25 I mentioned, guys. Off highs. Did they recycle the range that you had potentially on expanding 128 points to upside back down in time for mid-session? Because mid-session usually determines typically, okay, how much range they're going to give you for that second half. So they've already given like close to a 32 to 34 point reduction here off highs. And I would say if they break down structural support around that 107 to 115 window right here, especially off this 5.8 to 6.1 area, then that's going to imply some volatility for the second half. If they sustain here, however, what kind of ranges do you guys think we'd be given? And this is a very tricky question because this breakdown for the 12:38, 12:36, 12:45, 1 p.m. mid-session definitely changed the dynamics for the second half of the afternoon. What would you guys think that this changed it by? And it doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's just that I can understand that your your level of understanding from market, like risk to reward to dynamics. Okay. I don't know what that means, Brian's. Oh, like 6, 8, 6, 7, 8, 8 to, or 9, 9 to 68.05 could be capped. I agree. That's a really, really good way of looking at it. Okay, so they might have, yeah, they might have reduced that range. Maybe they don't give us the full break to the 20s, and maybe now they're reducing it, right? Since that's one case, right? A lot of it, though, is going to also depend on what they do between when. This 107 through 115 through 124, 125, right? Okay, because didn't we say that we had odds of maybe expanding? I really need to start changing some of these colors. Didn't we say that we had odds of maybe expanding further off these areas here? Right, if they wanted to give us that full range. Off here, right? Like they could, in an off opening range, maybe they could have pushed us that extra 32 off open. Okay, didn't we say that maybe they give us that extra bump, so closer to these 40s, 30s. Right? These were the odds that we had. Okay, so I would say that those upside expansion odds are probably reduced. Do you guys agree? Obviously, anything can happen before mid-quarter because 17th is a huge flip day and it is OPEX next week. So if they really want to try fixing structural closes, obviously they can push the close if they really wanted to. But I would say that the odds of like the 68, 80s and 90s are probably reduced a lot. Odds of 68, 44, and 38, maybe not yet, right? I would probably wait to see what they do by like 125, 130. However, odds of 68, 20s, I think they could still be on the table. But if we don't retract range by, let's say, this window here, that's when I would start thinking what Brian's is saying, that we're probably reduced closer to like 99 and 05. Neutral ranges, basically. Does that make sense? Like 6799 to 6814 area, if they want to neutralize it. Okay. So what would be the conditions we'd have to have here then for them to basically avoid this kind of risk? So they did a good job sustaining 88 points. Okay. And whatever that range was from open. What did we say this range was from open? Right here. This area here, 66, 68 points. Okay, so if they did a good job doing that, they'd probably have to break a minimum of 88 points right here during these times, correct? So we have to take out 6780, 6781. And then off lows, it's probably that 107, so 77. So that's basically the same areas that we had before. It's going to be the same overhead areas that we have to clear right here. And that could get you that 107-point break. So let's watch this really closely, because this is what's going to help us determine range this afternoon. It keeps deleting all the timestamps on here though. So this is that mid-session candle. I usually watch the 12 window anyway. We said 124, 125. What time was that Fed speaker? At 2:30? What were those afternoon times, guys? We had the Fed speaker at 2:30, and then we also had the 2:44 odds, and I said we're going to note 2:33. 2:33 is a calculated time of day. I don't know why it keeps deleting this. And then we're going to watch 44. This is also another calculated time of day. And then I usually watch 4, 8, and 50 anyway. Same with 5, 4, and 3. Oh wow, are you guys seeing this stick break here to retrace range at 112? That's insane. Can you guys document that? 112 really trying to defend here and get back over that 7778. What do we want to do by mid-session, which is 1:15 p.m.? These are the conditions that we just set. What were the conditions by these points in time, guys? And sorry, I had to retract this, but we wanted 7778. Ideally, get back to where? This area here, okay? What would be even better for our odds? Did any of you guys try longs off 660, 63, 61? Basically the holds of that 59, 60 spot. This is a tricky area to go long just because obviously risk is a bit higher, but at least you have like a time limit in terms of how long it takes to actually break range. Yeah, if we can get over the zone, that would be even better. This was also a 17-point break right here, by the way, which is half of that 34. This would be a 22-point break here. And then breaking 33, 34 points basically gets you right back to that high, okay, of 9.4. Well, there's too much pressure during these time intervals, right? And they brought it back pretty low. If the market's moving in about a 4-minute or 2.5-minute interval, you can use the 3-minute chart today too, because 3 minutes linked to lows, which is also linked to mid-session, okay? And also linked to highs. So I think this is a really good short time frame to use. Okay, 8-2 being taken out here. Can this help our odds, guys? For the second half of the session today. This is why I said I wouldn't completely take off the 20s off the table just yet. I would at least wait till 115, 112, 125 just to see what they do before then. At the very least, though, we want to try getting back in the zone. Like, this is good in terms of range, but it's not the best in terms of fully negating this risk. So this is good enough to keep some odds in play of getting a high of day retest, but I would say that there's still risk as long as we're beneath 8.8, okay? The better odds that we had to get back in the zone were around 124, 125. I'm just gonna get some water though and make coffee, and I'll leave the screen on. I need like 5 minutes. I just wanted to see what they did at mid-session. Can someone document the closing price of this 115 stick, please? And the exact range off lows and off opening range on that, please? I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Okay, what's the one thing that really stood out to you guys for that 115 period? Because it stood out to me. And this kind of gave an idea of the direction that they would take here, hence the pressure that has to be applied once again. Correct? Okay, so they still kept it over 7.7, which was okay. Actually, I should make sure you guys can hear me first. Did I unmute myself? Because this was a really important time of day. Okay, so 107 points from lows, I noticed, and then off opening range on that candle, it was just beneath 88 points. Okay, can that start implying some volatility here? So like, look at the range that they put it to. They took it just over, but they closed it beneath. Okay, and there was no follow through to negate that. But they did close above, just ahead of that 115 period. How important do you guys think it's going to be, especially at this point in the day, specifically off these very calculated ranges, that they tried to immediately negate and retrace? And it kind of like what we had happen at 107, 112. And it doesn't necessarily have to be as aggressive as this was, since volatility's increased now, but maybe at least back over like 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, just to at least extend this period through maybe like just before 2, since we have that Fed speaker at 2. Can we confirm that they've definitely started reducing range now based on how they traded this around these periods here? Yes. Okay. Yeah, they could also save some of the volatility maybe for like the Fed sessions this afternoon, since we had some odds around that 230, 233, 244, 318. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we have a lot of odds around this window too, so they might be saving some of that for end of day today. I'm just going to mark the end of day candles here too, and then 52 was a calculated time. They still haven't broke structure fully yet though, which is what starts making these a little bit harder to trade and just easier to manage the trades that you're already in. Okay, so you should have covered at least something in, earlier we said in this area here. I didn't cover off 3638 because I felt like odds were higher to push to 5866. Right, so my second cover was in this area here. And then my third cover, I took off that that break of 8.8. And I think it's fair to hold. I would have been more inclined to hold 50% of my position into second half if we had broken 128 points. Does that make sense? Like, if we had taken out 6799, I would have held half. Okay? Does that make sense? Versus leaving like 25 or 20 to 30% into that second half, because especially when they stalled there at 4.5 and then brought this back down right here. Another way of trading that is you can add it back, like if you want, like another position or roll out. I had same days, so obviously my risk is a bit higher since I don't have Monday's expiration. But then this way, it doesn't matter as much because you're taking most of your risk off in an area that could be a max range. Does that make sense? And then you're still leaving 25 to 30% in case you do get that 6805, 6820s. I'm just telling you guys how I traded my trade, but obviously everyone can take their own risk differently. Maybe the only thing I would have done differently today is not taken any off in here, but I wanted to be safe in terms of holding those opening range lows that we discussed this morning, like here and here. So to me, it made sense to cover in the 25 to 22 area, but there could have been an opportunity to add back some of the calls here too. Does that make sense? Like in terms of the stick break right here and here, ahead of like 3.7, 3.8 holds, or even add back contracts off the 4.4, 4.8 holds right here too. There was a few opportunities to buy back. Would this be the opportunity to buy back right here this afternoon? What do you guys think? I would say yes, right? Like between that 60, if it's, as long as it's above 5.8, 5.850, and that 5.975, whatever that spot was. So basically above here. And I think this is a 68 point range here. I think it's still safe, but you'd have to have your stop right around break even. Okay, so you might get wicked out like 2-3 points, but in my opinion, this would be like the last area for long entries this afternoon, unless they break it down, because then that's when we could end up having a very shitty Chettle type of range, right, where they could take it back into the means. Then you're at risk of testing 4.4, 3.6, 3.8. Does that make sense? That's what would end up making it a bit of a choppier type afternoon if they did something like this. And it's going to be it's going to be the loss of 5.8. Okay? They're trying to turn it back around that 130 period. I didn't really think that they could around 130. Based on the amount of range they brought it back down to. Maybe if they would have held closer to like 7.3, 7.2, okay, but I don't think 130 was enough to bring it back over this 7.7 area. That's why I figured maybe closer to like 145, 148. Maybe some earlier odds could be closer to that 136, 138 window, but they'd have to have some pretty good negation sticks off our 132, 35, 36. XOM had a really good reversal off lows, and it's almost back to that weekly range that we had talked about. So I would say same targets in play for 119.93 and that 120.60 on XOM. I don't know if anyone traded that, but this was also a really nice trade off lows. Gold also hit weekly targets. So gold, I didn't really expect it to do too much more here. It hit right where we figured it would into this week. So, and then stalled, came back. So as long as gold pins around 4,100, I think that's fine. Don't do what? You guys should be more than content with 6, 7, 8, 8, right? So we had a chance of stalling 6758, okay, to 6766 if they wanted to. So even getting 6788 is definitely great range, okay? So the fact that they're holding 6758 is good. Do you guys know what else I noticed? Hey? That 662575 area, this area here, and it's between that 5-8. Remember how we had like those 7-point intervals earlier, like down here? Do you guys remember that? It's the same thing in here, but now this time beneath that 6675 and above 5-8, and that should get you to that 6803 area. It's the same thing. These offsets in range are kind of what are causing this this volatility here. Do you see it, guys? It's about 7 to 7.75 points, okay, give or take. And it's the same thing as when they brought this back down right here. And here, remember how I said I really preferred that they would have held closer to 7.8, 7.7. And I also noticed that the range differential between this 60 and then that 5.8, 5.850 area, the 2 points, are you guys listening? Is about the same differential of getting this to 9.798. Isn't that interesting? And then if we look at the actual increments based on where they broke at this point in time, it was 3.25 points against this low, so that was at 5.7. That's probably going to be like that 9.8, 9.850. Isn't that really cool? This is just based on the kind of increments that they're working with, and this should align with that 128 points. Isn't that crazy? So I already started to tell what kind of session this was going to be just based off that test of 6758. Does that make sense, guys? You have to start picking up on this stuff on your own. So that's how I started knowing, okay, that means that they might break 6758, 6766, but there could be some stalls and volatility back and forth. And then that would make this area a huge area of support. Does that make sense? For like this mid part of the session. And that makes sense too, because what does this area usually imply? It's kind of cool that the math part of it and the price action part of it goes with the base theory. Which is what? What's the base theory here? Obviously a bear zone implies bearish price action. The means implies and we just so happen to be calculated around these price points anyway. What does the means imply, guys? There's another reduction off 3.6. So I think my thoughts were right on. I don't see them retesting this area, at least not until around 148 and 2 o'clock. And that's only if they can try breaking some of these structures back over 7.6. Otherwise, that 5.8, 5.9 retest is still potentially in play here. What does the means imply, guys? So I'm not surprised to see this kind of PA in these areas here, volatility. There is also something that was a bit concerning is they did break 34 points in range, okay, back in here, okay, on the very first attempt. So this in itself can start implying some crossovers. Usually when you have crossovers, that's when you'd hit like maybe 38, 39 points. Otherwise, there's going to be those risks of like the 44-point intervals, which can be the same thing as testing the bottom of the means and basically trying to sustain these higher lows here. Okay, of like above 4.8. Yeah, and the means is between where? 5.1 to 6.4, right? Yeah. Well, and it implies volatility, but... Does this help you guys understand the PA a little bit better, at least, in terms of like what to expect? I feel like if they took this just a little bit higher on the 5.8 test, like let's say the very first test of 5.8, okay, if they took it to 60, 61, they wouldn't have stalled 9.7. Does that make sense to you guys? Or 9.5? They would have probably taken it to 9, at least 9.8, okay, 9.9. This is where the volatility started coming in. Right here, and then this is where like these breakdowns started coming in right here too, because even this is a crossover between the channel and the means, correct? This here is a crossover, is it not, between the channel and the means? 4.7. Do you guys see the common theme here? Do you see the theme? Remember when I said that if you take a long off like 60, 61, you could have like a 3-point stop? And that's like basically the same thing as them triggering 5.8, but then sustaining this like 50, 51 spot. Okay, that's a mid-range. And these are kind of the sessions that we're working with right now too, are like these mid-range sessions. So they're a little bit harder to gauge because the price might not be exact. And that makes sense too, because how many points did we stall beneath 128 to 130 points? Do you see what I'm saying? 3 points. Does that make sense to you guys? Nine eight, 9.9 is more confined, not 9.5, okay? 5.8, 60 is more confined, not 5.4, 5.5. Okay, 7.4, 7.7, 7.8 is more confined, not 7.1, 70. 51, 52 is more confined, not 4.7. Do you get the common theme that's happening since mid-session this afternoon? And right at mid-session off that are 1236, 1238, 1245 sticks, which so far now are the high of day sticks on our mid-session range right here. And then the second part of mid-session at 114, 115, they made a lower high, couldn't bring it back around. This is where range starts to get really compressed. And obviously volatility could increase. Could they hold this part of the session here? Yes, because then they could maybe sustain off this offset here. It's not the best area, like, but 5-1 is technically holding the means, and it would still make a bit of a higher low here. Another area that they could try break or holding off of would be that 4-4. Okay. Anything beneath, coming back beneath 6-7-4-4, then our range is capped, and we're probably going to channel this afternoon. That's when you'd see me sign off, like before these Fed speakers get on. What are some things that can help our odds this afternoon a little bit? Hey, what are some things that could help our odds this afternoon, or that have maybe helped our odds? In terms of maybe trying to get back into the zone. But 6-7-9-5 doesn't do anything. There's nothing. It's nothing that there's no confinement at 6-7-9-5. There's something that's a bit more specific. Six, 7-9-5, if anything, is a bearish spot to stall. That doesn't really help us. No, Minchin, I'll let you guys. No. What did we do off these points in time? What did I tell you guys to track? That you guys obviously didn't track. Clearly not. I just gave you guys the answer to on the screen. What did you guys do at those times? Remember how I said this 5-4, 5-2 area could be like a mid range? It's not really confined, but neither was 6-7-9-5. So it would make sense if they try holding 5-2, 5-3, 5-4. What did they do at 1:15 and 1:45, you guys? Or 12:45? Give me exact answers. I don't want just a very base answer. This isn't a basic stream, so you guys can't be giving basic responses, okay? Where do they close above, open above at those points in time? I marked those alerts here because I wanted to see if they try retracing at 150, 148, if they can hold the line here off 5-4 and try retracing back over that 6-1, 60, which is... This is why you guys need to start writing notes on your charts. Start writing notes. If I'm going through this in real time, put notes on your charts. What are they doing at this time? Oh, they're breaking back over 88 points from session lows. Oh, okay. That's probably a good thing. Okay, what else are they doing at this time? Oh, they're trying to get this back over 66, 68 points off open. Okay. What did they do at this time? What did they do at this time here? Off 1245. Did we not say that 115 point break? The third increments or whatever of 346? What did they do at 114, 115? Did they not hit like a 107 point metric here? What did they do at 114, 117? Did they not hit an 88 point metric here? You guys need to get way better at tracking. Then otherwise there's no point in doing these streams. There really isn't. That's why I say track those candles, track the range, track the exact price points. The only thing I didn't like that they put this back beneath 8.8 here. The good thing is they did it ahead of time though, so that might help. Okay? I already know that we have some really odd ranges, so they might just bring this 3 points to 3.25 points beneath that 5.7. Didn't we talk about this? Didn't I just talk about this? That they could take it 3.25 beneath that 5.7? Since this is what started off that risk in the first place? Look at where they held. 5.375, 5.4. Can you guys pay better attention, please? Please, pay more attention, okay? No one's gonna stream live like this kind of stuff. Okay, 8.8's a huge breaker. What they just did here is they broke it back 88, 68 points off these lows, okay? So what would be the next thing that you'd have to do here? What do you have to do? Think about it. Oh, well, we probably have to get back over that 88 point ratio. Otherwise, we're never going to recover from this range. Do you see what I'm saying? When would you want to do that by? These were our calculated times, you guys. Come on. They're literally the highs and the lower highs. Like, come on. Okay, so when would you want to do this by? Look at the time they hit these lows. Look at the time they're breaking range. When would you want to do this by? Think about it. Especially if we have Fed speakers this second half. Would you want to retest back over 6.7, 8.1, maybe 8.8 before Fed speakers get on? Yeah, obviously you would, right? Why the hell would you want to wait until they come on? That doesn't make any sense. That's going to increase volatility, okay? You also held a calculated mid-range. Remember how I said we're probably going to hold around 5354? Do you know how hard that is to calculate? Because there's so many factors that go into it, but to me it makes sense because that's the offset. Okay? That's that 3.25 points that we didn't track. We didn't trace. That's also equivalent to 128 points off lows. Okay? Do you see the confluence here? I'm not going to go over this again. This is also the same thing as the 3.5 points beneath this, whatever, 5-7 spot. Okay? So, that being said, to offset this risk, to give you the odd of testing 679899, what do you have to do above this 87.5 to 82? Do not get this wrong. Like, this question you can't get wrong. Everything else maybe you could have gotten wrong. This question you cannot get this wrong. What do you have to do here to increase your probability of actually taking out this 9.5? No, give me the exact number. I don't want sweep. I don't want channel. I don't want volatility. I don't want answers like that. Give me the exact range. I'm giving you guys exact range, so you guys have to give exact range in your answers. What do you have to sweep? How many points do you have to take it out by? Exactly. So we want to take out at least 84, 85. Okay? Is everyone on the same page? Do you see why I said if we break beneath 5.8, 5.7, you'll probably get stopped out by 3-4 points, or set a wider stop just in case they hold that 5.3, 5.4, 5.5 area? Because it made sense that they'd probably do that. Okay? Time perspective. What would be the best point in time to do this by? When do you guys think? So we have a Fed speaker at 2:30, right? We have calculated odds at 2:33 and 2:44. Does that make sense why this range in here is probably going to be the last window for going long today? If they break this structure, then I would say that all odds are off. Do you see why I left a bit of a like 3-4 point buffer beneath 5.8? Because they left a 3 to 4 point buffer beneath 128, 132, okay? And beneath that 9899. Does that make sense to you guys? It's also the same buffer that they left between our stall right here, I noticed. Okay, like when they stalled whatever it was at 12:47:48 right here, 12:45. It was like when they stalled 8.4, that was like 3 points beneath whatever it was, 8.8. Mid sessions can be mid-range sessions can be very hard to trade. Don't you think that 150 stick probably psyched a lot of people out? Do you know how many people probably covered right here before they popped this back up? Or tried shorting here and then got stopped out? Because these aren't really confined areas. 9.5 is not a confined area. So they obviously are not going to hold a confined area, which would have been 5.8. Does that make sense to you guys? Oh, Slipperman. Yes, okay, this is a good session, though, to understand that. And it makes sense because guess what? Where did they open today? Did they open right at 8889? Think about it. No. Okay, did they close? Where do they close? Do they close right at 66566? Yeah, so the theme kind of started right from the open. Does that make sense? 9-2 is a good spot. At least they opened us in the zone, but it's not like a confined area. Okay. Okay, let's start doing some polls, because I think now before Fed would be good. Reclaim zone before Fed. I'll set that to 3 minutes. Zone is 6788 to those that are new here. You don't necessarily have to reclaim 6788. I just think it would help you offset the risk, but technically all we have to do is get back over 82, 83, 84. I'm watching the 2 to 204 and 207 window because this could be the earliest point that they try breaking back up these ranges, okay? Yeah, and 6744 is huge, right? That's an annual range. So annual ranges usually can trigger how many points, guys? Which is why they're so important to protect and bring them back to. Yeah, annual ranges. So like 256, 346, right? 2 o'clock trying to come back over that 7-4 area. We need to kind of see some breaks over 7-7, 7-8, 8-1. Are we still at risk here? This is a 22-point break. This was a 13-point break when they broke the stick here. This was 17-point break when they broke the stick here. Right now they're stalling around 22 points. So breaking back here was also going to be the same thing as getting off this low, you guys. It's the same thing as getting back over, like the zone is the same thing as 34 points. Isn't that crazy? The alignment there. So a 34-point break back above this low right here is the same thing as 6788. Yes, okay. We reduce risk once we break what? And I would bet money that these areas are 44-point ranges. Yeah, they are. 6798, guys, is 44 points. Isn't that crazy? So do you see how taking it to this area here can reset and confine these areas if they can break these specific ranges? Okay, so it means when you take out or retest this 8-1, to help reset this, you'd have to take out, I hate this stupid extension thing. Hold on. I take that off again. Okay, so when you come back and do that, to offset this, you have to take out this kind of range. Does that make sense, guys? You'd have to do stuff like this, basically. Moves like this. Okay, that's what will give you that odd of this. A tide pole? Oh, no. Well, the earliest odds are around 204, 207 for the 7-7, 7-5. And that 7-8, 50 retest. So let's see. These are also points in time, guys, where they can start reducing range if they want to. So see that 204, how they just had a reduction stick? Measure that and see what the offset would have been if they cleared. So let's see. Five and a half points. So at the very least, yeah, that would have been the retest of 7778. What could that imply? These are not actual flips, okay? These are just points in time that I like to measure because they usually can give you an implication. Sometimes they are actual calculated times. In today's case, they're not, okay? So today we have more odds around 230, 233, 244, which is right when Fed gets on. So what could this imply here? This 204, 05, these reduction sticks. And they're the exact reductions of failing to get back over 7778. What do you guys think? We need to bring back the soundboard. This is what we need to do. How can I wake you guys up? That's on the reduction stick. Maybe we'll play that whenever we have a reduction stick. Or stall. Okay. That obviously implies a potential delay. I don't really even consider that a delay since we don't really even have high odds during this period. It just would have helped our odds obviously during this period here, but how would you start managing this now ahead of 230, 245? Okay. That might be easier for me too than measuring exact range or saying exact price points. So it's still the same idea here in terms of like major risk, obviously. Do you see how they're kind of keeping this right in between here? And I would probably measure off like the 7778 just because that's a little bit more calculated. And off that, where did it go? Off that 5-1. What kind of session could this turn into this afternoon? Based on 9-8, 9-9 stalls, based on 7-8 breaks, based on 5-7, 5-8 breaks, but 5-1, 5-2 holds. Yes. Do we have odds of bringing it back to highs by end of session, since this could be durational till end of session today? Which is basically like testing 6, 7, 9, 8, 9, 9, 6,800, whatever. Yes, obviously, right? But based on what? What are some conditions that we have for that to be the case? Yes? Do those conditions make sense to you guys? If they really, 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 really want to delay things, then, since unfortunately we have odds like right into the close today at like 352, which is kind of annoying because that means that they could just keep this stuck until then, but we also have those odds at 318, and then there's that Fed speaker at 320. So another thing that they could do if they end up stalling during this 2 to 2:30 period, which so far it looks like they're doing, they could delay. This is where I would start maybe sizing down on some of my positions. Do we still have some time? Even though we're past mid-session, right? Do we still have some time? Based on calculated periods for today? What is that Fed speaker at 2:30 talking about? Do you also see too how this can help you gauge the kind of risk that we could have, like heading into that period too? Hey guys, there are some Fed commentary coming out right now too, by the way, like that have come out in the last like 5-10 minutes. Yeah, so if we're trading beneath these points here, okay, then obviously there would be a lot more risk, I would think. Do you guys agree? If they're trading in between here, what does that tell us? Okay. Bulls have more control over 7-8, 8-1, 8-4. Bears, I think, have more control beneath 6-4, 60. Neutral area, which can be stuck or both directions or sideways, is between the 6-4 to 7-2 range, I would say. Okay, so how important would it be that we end up breaking range before this 230 period, you think? Do you see how you could still gauge risk even ahead of Fed? Okay, so let's mark these as zones, okay? We'll make this area like bullish neutral, okay? It's not bullish, but it's still bullish neutral. This area as neutral. This area as bearish neutral. Right here, and then this area down here as bearish, okay? I feel like some of you guys just work better with color schemes. I don't know why, but okay, so these are going to be the areas that we're looking at. This is the bad zone right here. Does this help you guys? Okay, and where we're trading before 230, I think is going to give us a pretty good idea on the kind of PA we could look to expect for that 230, 244 to 320 period at least. Obviously, we'll reassess by that second speaker around 318, 320. Okay, let's do a poll for the box. Okay. Which box ahead of 230? What time is it? I'm gonna set this for 5 minutes. Can you guys vote on that? I put it for 5 minutes. So SPX is basically in the channel, so that's interesting. Guys, on SPX is in the channel here. So that's kind of cool because it means that SPX is stuck between 3.3 and 4.9. With some slight breaks here. So ES is holding near the bottom of the channel. SPX is holding near the bottom, or sorry, ES is holding the bottom of the means. SPX is holding the bottom of the channel. Can we get more votes, guys? Come on. So I would say if they can get it to this area as early as like 224, 225, then we have some pretty decent odds of retesting 7.8, 7.9, 8.1, 8.4 before 230. Okay, if they can get to this area as early as then we maybe have some odds of getting back to the zone before 230. Okay. If they keep it stuck in these areas here, then we have an odd to do what? That's a trick question, by the way. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Brendan. Exactly what Brendan just said, and I said that this could be the case. Remember what I said that they could do? They could just flatten the week. How would they flatten the week? How would they flatten the week? They just take it back to 6, 7, 8, 8. I said that first thing this morning. I said that at 7:45 this morning, okay? So 9:45 a.m. that the odds today are they probably just bring it back to flatten the week at 6, 7, 8, 8. So I would think that if they keep it stuck in like this yellow box range around these times, that could be what they might end up doing. Does that make sense, guys? Because yellow would equate to being basically flat. It's not bearish, but it's not really bullish either. But it could also give it an odd if they break these areas here to retest, which could still give it some time to backtest, right? And maybe just pin end of session today. Okay, what should I vote for? Okay, I'm going to vote, but I'm not going to tell you guys what I'm voting for, okay? And remember, some of the earlier odds could be as early as that 221, 224 period, which, like we said, is even better. Because then it's going to increase our odds of maybe getting to the zone by before 2:30. Or not even the zone, but maybe getting that 8.4 retest, 8.5 retest. And I think if they can retest 7.778 by 2.4, then that odd would be pretty decent. Like this. Okay. All right, let's set some alerts here. What does the 3-minute look like? Because that's linked with low of day. 1, 2, 3. So 24. And then the fourth bar be between 27 and 30. That's interesting. Let's watch the 3-minute. Okay, see, this is good. 6777 being broken ahead of 224 is giving pretty good odds here. Because like I said, they could try maybe testing this range as early as like 224, 227, which could give odds of getting into the zone. And the earlier you break, it means that you have odds of doing what by these calculated times? And we can use that 3-minute too as a nice potential expansion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Six, 7, 8, 1 being tested here ahead of 224. We have some odds as early as 224, 227 to break this 8.4, 8.5 area here, which gives us odd of getting to the zone before 2:30. Which could give us an odd of, complete my sentence, you guys. What would that give us an odd of doing during these calculated times? Come on. Oh, I didn't do the soundboard for the reduction. They did trigger A3 though. I feel like A4 would have been better. So what do you guys make of this? So far, 8-3 stall at 224. We need at least 8-4, 8-5, we said, right? Do you think that reduced odds of retesting high of day? As early as this period here? Maybe, but... yeah, and we have something that can obviously push price in either direction. Okay. Okay, let's reset these again. What time is it? 27. 27 trying to retrace back. I'm still going to track that 3 minute even though they took this back because this is the fourth bar and that runs till 2:30 and it aligns with the 2:33. And we're going to watch 2:36 too even though I didn't have it marked here. Do you see how they delayed this period back in here? And I said that this is implying a delay. When I was waiting for those answers, this area here, this implied delays until probably this point in the day. What color did you guys vote for before 2:30? So I voted green because I felt like at the very least they'll at least try retesting 8-1, 8-3, 8-4, 8-5, and I knew that 8-4 is the overhead. So it's interesting because they didn't take out 8-4 yet. So I figured they would at the very least try testing 8-1 to 8-4. And mostly based on these structural holds here. Quarter green. Okay, so let's see what happens here. What time is it? My calculated point is closer to 232, 233. Like these areas here. But I still want to see what they do at 2:30. They're in the green ahead of 2:30, which is, I think this was the 66-point break off open, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see what they do here. Let's watch this in the 5-second charts. This is where it gets more fun, especially at these points in the day. All right. Watch the 30-second interval here to see if they try giving some structure breaks. So far we're pretty spot on with this area being the calculated lows, but 8-4, 8-5 is also a calculated high, okay? So, and the best point in time to break is between this 230 to 233 window, okay? Oh, 6, 7, 8, 1 close here at 230, that can help. So I was thinking the best odd is close to this 232, 33. That's also a calculated time where they could stall us by, so just keep that in mind. Immediate reduction stick, though, at 231 of 4 points. I don't know, guys. I'm starting to lose faith. All right, let's set this to 1 minute. Can you guys vote on that quickly, just because I only set it to a minute, since we obviously don't really have very much time. This is what kind of helped me also just hold on a bit longer for some of those calls that I had from this morning, just because we had odds at 233 and 244. Can you guys vote, please? Come on, more votes than that. We've only got like 15 seconds here, so... And I'm almost certain the calculated time was around 2:33. I could be a minute off, so I'm going to watch that 3.4 to 3.6 window too. And it's mostly to see if they break up or down at this point. If calculated times are not necessarily always range related, they're also in relation to the kind of PA you can get from now until end of session. Does that make sense? Because the kind of PA that we get right now could help us determine the PA that we'll get by like 3:48, 3:52. So let's see here. Oh, tide. Tide usually implies that they don't break. From a structural perspective, though, they did break this area, right? So okay, how important do you guys think the follow-through sticks would be here around 234, 5, 6? Very. And it's pretty crazy that we know that 8.4 is overhead, because that's a calculated range. Hence them stalling around 8.3. Because if they would have taken out 8.3, 8.4, that would have been enough for them to probably have pushed that on that stick failure here and the stick failure here. If they start really delaying, let's say through here, right? Like these parts of the session, this is where I'd start thinking that we're probably going to be pinnable the rest of this afternoon. Oh, I just realized I saved that over my template. Can I undo that? Oops. I did not mean to save that over my template. I don't think you guys need the color scheme anymore. This is the 3-6 candle, right? Okay. Is this window at least helping you guys, like, in terms of managing? Like, I would probably, if we don't start seeing breaks over like 8.4, 8.5 by 2:44, let's say 2:48, 3 o'clock, I'll probably start covering most of my position before that 3 o'clock window for Fed. But them taking it here at this point in time, it could leave that odd open where if they really want to delay things, then remember how I said they could delay it through 318, 320, which obviously would suck, but that's usually the case if they know that they have a limitation in range that they're working with. That would be the case if they end up stalling here. Which honestly, stalling here makes sense based on the theme of this week, because we stalled neutral zone this week, right? 6,900. So stalling 6,798, 6,803 would make sense if that's all the range that's left for the session today. If they want to take out highs, that's if they take them out, because it kind of aligns with the theme for the week. But so far, they're making this very sticky. Okay, one sec. Okay. So they did bring it back to that green zone though in time for 2:30. How many people think 6, 7, 8, 5 or 8.4 clearance by the 2:44 p.m. calculated time? This had a better odd based on how much they stalled earlier, but that would have been relative to what they do by here. I don't know if the colors were helping you guys, but just think of anything above 7.7 as... My chart's going to be too messy if I start applying color schemes here, but this area here. Essentially, we just want to stay above these areas here for this 2:30 to 2:44, 2:48 duration. Okay? It's not bad if you come back to this area here, but I would think it would apply or imply some risk. Okay? I'll just leave these on here in case it's helpful. I don't know. Okay, so pay close attention here, because are the sticks that come in ahead of time, like, are they important here? So, like, look at what they did here at 25, 6, 7. Okay, not really the best PA. Okay, and then 231, 32. Is that the kind of price action you want to see ahead of 244? No, right? You probably want to try taking out 8.3, 8.4 before 244 so that you have some odds of doing what? Or at least retesting these ranges. What does that give you an odd of doing? Okay? Because this is how we're going to start determining if our range for the session is limited or not, you guys. We already started to determine that based on mid-sessions, but this is going to help us determine if we even have a shot at taking out highs, correct? Because as long as they keep it beneath 8.8, we're stuck within this range, correct? Between 5.2 to 8.8, 8.4 probably. Who voted on that? I did forget to pin that today, and I know I'm going to get yelled at by the end of the stream. I didn't even see the poll come up. What did you guys vote? I didn't even see the result on that. 2 people voted? Come on. Okay, well, you're only one of 2, so. 2:44 p.m. You guys clearance of 6784. Okay, well, we're not even looking for a break over 88. We just want to see if it was 44. Okay, so can you guys vote on that? I said it only for a minute or two because we don't have that much time. It's already 2:42. And these are the big areas, and them bringing it back down like this is fine, because notice that they tested 8250, 83 ahead of time. But I would say that this 42, 43 stick is very crucial in terms of these breaks, and then obviously the follow-through stick this time. So we're going to mark the 4-5 for follow-through. And we always have a window around 248, 250 anyway, so we're going to watch that period too, because that's what could help push back into the zone. I don't think that they're going to push it back into the zone based on how they're trading, but obviously it depends on the comments made by Fed speakers right now too. So let's see. Okay. And it was quite obvious that they reduced odds when they broke down range like that at 231 here, okay? Since we had calculated odds at 232, 233. So do you see the difference in PA here at 242 versus 231? Thanks, Eli. So you can compare this 4-3 stick basically to this 3-1, 3-2 stick, okay? Let's see what they do here. Give us those breaks of 8-4. Stalling at this point here could do what? Tied again? Come on. Thanks, Wildcater, for doing the point contributions. Okay. They're kind of hovering that 8-1, 80. I feel like they should have closed over 8-1 though, or like 8-1, like this area here, 8-150. Which could give us that delay. I would be a little bit cautious now. We can give it that 1 minute follow through window, but it's not holding bad ranges, it's just not breaking range. So like 6778, 6781, those are still good areas to be in at this point in time. But in terms of range breaks, it's not giving that break of range. Does that make sense? Because these areas are still good spots from the morning that can help our odds for like 3 and 320. Okay. So these areas have a lot of confluence, and it's a good point in time to bring it there. But I want to see what happens off that follow through stick here at 245. Because this can help extend this window through 248, 250, okay? 245 follow through here, breaks of 8-3. And trying to test 8-4. This was very crucial for market makers to basically try bringing price back up here. Especially post this 244 calculated period, because this is what would keep some odds in play of getting a high of day retest this afternoon and potentially odds of getting back into that zone. How important is follow through here, guys? Between 245, like I was saying, and 248. Very. Okay, so 46784 being taken out here. We want to see if they try taking out 8-5. And then ideally zone breaks. If they can get this back to the zone before 3, then at least we have some odds of getting those breaks of highs as early as as that 3, whatever it was, 318, 320. There's some odds here if they can bring it to the zone at 248, 250. Okay, I need to manage my position, but we'll watch really closely here what they do, okay? Did any of you guys try a long entry off this area here? Like I said down here, I was like, this is the only spot. If they're going to have another long this afternoon, this would be it. They're not going to give another opportunity because anything beneath this is chop, okay? So let's see if they can bring it back to the zone off 48. If they can get it back to the zone between 48 and 50, we have pretty good odds to try retesting those highs by 3. Okay? Nice. Get us back in the zone, guys, before 3. Come on. Give us some of those odds of the 6,800s this afternoon. Six, 7, 8, 750 test here. So far, 4-8 stalling right beneath that 67.88. If you took a long off this area here, you could definitely take some off in this range, especially because 6, 7, 8, 8 is a huge area. If you want to wait until 3 o'clock, that's obviously up to you. I just know that they could start implying some volatility here, so sometimes it's better to be a bit cautious. Okay. Do I have an 8-8 trigger set? I do. Do you see that immediate reduction stick here at 4-8? And this is likely due to this being a little bit late. 6.25 points. That's probably that range back to 9192. And probably really close to those highs. What's the overall reduction here? 8 points. Those are probably right at highs. Yeah, they are. Okay. So you'd have to probably immediately negate, retrace, retract. Let's see. Where did they close again at 159? 6771. Where did they close at? 1259? 6779. Okay, so that makes sense that they kept it in this range then for those last 2 hours. So at the very least, you probably want to close above 8485, right? Closing in the zone for the last hour is going to give us the best odds of retesting highs and maybe getting those extended breaks that we talked about. But I think staying beneath 84, 85 would maybe make it a pinnable afternoon at core areas or back to 6, 7, 8, 8. So a lot of this is just going to be relative to what they do here ahead of 3. How many of you guys voted yes that time that they would break during that window? Okay, let me start removing some of these so we can see. What do you guys notice about this period here? Those contracts actually moved really nicely. They're already up over 100%. No. Where are you sustaining above? pushing more. Come on. You're sustaining above that 7-7, 7-8, 7-9. Do you see it? That's the only thing that's keeping these odds in play of retesting this 8-8. Okay? What are some of those smaller structures look like now? Do we have any flags that formed? 10-minute flagged up nicely. 11 minutes, a really nice flag. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that runs till 54. Okay. $13 is not bad. 301. 14 is nice. This is a valid flag. And that's from 150. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is between that 3 and 3:14 window. Can we watch the 14-minute, guys? This is a really nice flag setup for this afternoon. I would imagine that the 15-minute flag too. Let's see if we can have something that's more aligned with, so the 16 is more aligned with that 320, but maybe there's probably like a 21 or 22-minute. Yeah, see, this is really nice for 320. Let's watch the 20-minute too. And because this is where we could get those 4 bars. Can we watch 3:15 p.m. also? And I like these ones too just because they're based off that 150 hold, okay? So let's go back. This is 54.05. 16. What did we say that was? I like this time frame too just because of the alignment with our ranges here. And then we said the 20, what was it? The 20-minute? That one's pretty obvious that it's just moving in those increments. Okay. So there's a little window, guys, just after 3. Okay? Between like 301, 305. You see how they're reducing range here, though? Around these areas? Do you guys see it or no? Okay, so I knew that they could take out 8-4. I didn't really think that they would take out the zone around this point in time, but they definitely have an odd... if they delay until 3:18, 3:15, 3:20, that's gonna suck, but there was that probability that they could just delay this until here, but there is a bit of a window here between 2:58, 3:01, 3:05 p.m., 6, 7, 8, 8. Okay, I'll set this to 2 minutes. This is gonna start helping us determine just how much range we might still have left for this last hour of the session, okay? Can you guys vote on that, please? This is a really important point in the day here. Because if we start stalling a bit, then I'm probably just gonna cover and watch the last hour. Especially if they decide to start making this pinnable in these areas here. Which they could do. Let's put these alerts back on. Okay. I already had calculated times at 318. There's the Fed speaker at 320. There's multi-flips at 320, multi-flips at 315, 14, 16. So what could this imply here? What could this window here imply? Right here. Let me take off those extensions. What could this window imply? Same with this window here, since we have a bit of a window here. What could this imply? Come on, guys. Get your votes in. 258's coming up. What does this imply, you guys? 678575 being retested here at 2:58 p.m. What are these called? Multi. It's crazy how they keep stalling the 85, 87, 88. Multi-flips, yeah. Multi-flips can sometimes do what? What can they allow for? Yes and no. So think about it from the dynamics of this trade, okay? What could that imply? This is also a 33, 34 point break. Yeah, it would imply volatility. Directional's right. What does that imply though? And that's very important around 8.8 and 9.2 and 9.5 that you get what? This is a really good close ahead of 3 o'clock, guys. 6, 7, 8, 5, 7, 5. We don't necessarily need 8.8. I said we just needed around that 8.4, 8.5 area, and I think that would be helpful. For if we have a window between 301, 301, 305. What would that imply, guys? Con, tin, you, Asian. Okay, you could have continuation if you have multi-flips like this, especially off ranges like this. Do you want to have continuation periods or odds at these price points here? Or do you want to have odds of stalling? Don't you want continuation if you're flagging, like just like on a base theory and you're over these areas at these points in time? Yeah, but also because you have multiple flips, so it could just, these are all bull flips. They're not bear flips, they're all bull flips, so you can usually have like continued sticks. The odds are a little bit better during this period though. They so far though haven't brought it back to the zone. So I think what we initially had said was right in terms of these potential delays through this window here, which could make it super heavy up here. probably important though that they try bringing some of this back up. Yeah, there was a lot of flags. There was the 10 minute. 10 minutes not really confined, but because the structure of this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. 7 bars usually do what? What do 7 bars usually do? This is also the 4th bar, like a mini structure here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Between 3, 309. Yeah, they can expand or exhaust, right? So the 11 minute would run from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 305, 316. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? These could have extended periods. 1, 2, 3, 4, exhausted. 5, 6, 7. So that could expand between 314, 327. Do you want to try breaking the zone here? Maybe into this period here? So that you could have odds of continuation here. We have a Fed speaker here. Zone re-entries here. This is setting up pretty nicely for the last part of the session today. Market gave some good buybacks around that 5.3, 5.4, 5.7, 5.8 area. We're back in the zone here at 302. There's some flips around 03, or sorry, 05, 10, 09. We have odds. We have an expansion window between 3:14 to 3:27 p.m. Okay. What area would make sense to expand off of? So think about it from like a structure theory and think about it from a realistic price theory. And then think about it from time. And then think about it from catalyst. So like everything has to basically align. What area would you want to expand off of or have continuation off of? And this is a big area in general, guys, so if you're not comfortable holding into the last hour, you can cover. We just have decent odds considering where we closed at 3 p.m. and the fact that we have calculated odds around 318, 320, plus we also have a durational session till 3:52 and 4 p.m. Where would you expand off of, or where would you want continuation off of? Highs, yes. Like, you don't want to stall highs. You're not, are you going to have continuation if you stall highs? Obviously not. Okay. It's also the last hour, last half into weekly close. Right? These areas should feel super heavy up here too, especially around this point of the day. The odds around 305 and 310 weren't that strong, but at least they brought it back to the zone ahead of time. What period of time has the best odds if they really want to try testing or taking out highs? To avoid this from just basically stalling, coming back down to these ranges, pinning the close. Which they could do. I'm not completely taking away that probability, okay? Do you see the reduction in range from 301, 302, 304, 305? What are they starting to do here? I wouldn't say that they're reducing range, because we already had a reduction in range. This is the 4th bar on the most valid frames that we had, 14 minute. They're starting to. Okay. Do you see the exhaustion off some of these 4th bars here? What's the only advantage that we have? Could they turn this back around before 320? This looks like it's potentially engulfing here. Yeah, the only advantage that we have is time, but there's not very much of it. But we did have some odds to start exhausting as early as 301, 305. Okay, through 310, 309. When do they have to start retracing this by? Especially this area here. So reduction in range is not wrong, Li. Like that's the right answer, but this was an exhaustion period. So this is an early exhaustion period ahead of a potential. Okay, and you can see these ranges probably align with the 9-9. Yeah, they do. Do you see that? That's basically the cutoff until end of day. And me personally, I would not hold until like the very, very, very end of day if I feel like the odds are pretty low in terms of like getting the full structure breaks or retracements, especially if they start making this a pinnable close. We'll see if they can try retracting. It's basically the same thing that we were looking for here in terms of like sustaining 7-7, 7-6, retracing 7-8, 7-9, 8-1. Okay, that's the only way that you're going to keep these odds in play. Otherwise, that's where you'd start having those lower probabilities for the final half of the session, and then they can make it a pinnable close. Also, they didn't bring it to the zone before 3. I do think that if they had done that, odds would have been a little bit more favorable during this time period. However, they still brought it above that 8-4, 8-5. Okay, so it can give bulls a slight advantage here as long as they try to retrace. Especially during this window, because this is kind of the window that would open up volatility. Could we see some very immediate retracement sticks here? You guys? $310 really trying to fight off some of this volatility into this second window. So that's, I think this was the 6th bar or 7th bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 7th bar. Okay, and this run runs till 320, which is when that Fed speaker comes on. 11 minute is on its 6th, and this flips at 316. So they technically have an odd to try bringing this back up by 316, but they have to get moving quick. Remember how I said they could engulf this? If this flips at 316, okay, you definitely have to see some sort of range on these next few minute sticks. Otherwise, those odds start to get really reduced. Okay, how many people, how many of you guys think that the highs are in? I'll put that pull up. If you guys can answer that. Immediate reduction stick here too. Off that 311. So I can already tell that this 10 minutes probably forming somewhat of a star because it took out that low. Same with this. You see how this could be the engulfing period between 12 and 24? Okay. Do they have an odd to try negating during these periods? And these periods are basically between this window here and then around 327, 324, 320, 330, 336. It aligns with Fed and imbalance prints. Okay, let's get some votes, guys. Come on. No, I don't know. I don't think that's on the table anymore. I feel like they would have had to clear this area, not exhaust at this time. But anything's possible, obviously. 20-minute also exhausted off a third bar. That would only be the case if they really bring it back like end of day, which I don't think they would do that. Because they don't really have to. They also formed a bit of a 3-bar pattern here too, right at 314, so that would make sense if they want to have continued downside exhaustion or expansion during this window. Is this a bad window to exhaust? Okay, let's start taking away some of these. Yes. So what do you want to try doing at this point in time once again? Since expansion odds are now reduced, especially around that 315, 16, 18, 20 window. Because then otherwise there's going to be a lot of volatility risk here, and I could see that happening, especially into these periods of the day. Like, this is definitely a spot where I would expect there to be an increase in volatility. Like, even off that 15 stick. if you guys saw this. Also, still have that tuned in. Okay, so highs are in second place and 6798, 6799. That's pretty fair, I think. I do think that there's some risk right now coming into this though with us stalling right here and then heading back to this area at these crucial points in the day between 305 and 314, 318. 318 is a calculated time of day. Yeah, they did. But honestly, we can't complain. This was a really good move in general. Like, this was a huge move off lows this morning. So the fact that we even got 6788 is insane. $318, they're bringing it back to this little neutral box, which isn't the most ideal area to get back to ahead of this Fed speaker here. So I would say that we could look for some volatility, guys, into this last half hour, especially with this Fed speaker coming on. I would be very cautious now, especially since 318 is a calculated time of day. Okay. So if you want to start de-risking, obviously you can. You could have also de-risked up here, because now the risk is starting to increase. They have a shot at trying to retract some of this during these periods, but I would just be careful since we have a Fed speaker coming on. And we obviously had better odds when we were going into this part of the Fed green, right, or in that zone. So I feel like that can help you also just manage a little bit better too. We'll see if that 220 or 320 tries to retract a little bit here. Yeah, these are very pinnable spots for the market, so. And market gave some good opportunities to cover if you missed some covers back in here, so. As they basically neutralize this now into the close.
Welcome to all the Equity and Inclusion Fellows. I was part of the Diversity Council and the Policy Council when we created this program. And I have to say, when I went to the board and pulled some ribbons for my name tag, I was so excited to see all the years listed of Equity and Inclusion Fellows there. And I just think it's a real testament to APAM that they are willing to invest in this program. So, but now we get to chat. So we're going to spend probably about 20-25 minutes chatting, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So really simple question to start out with. Just tell us a little bit about your early years. Where did you grow up? You know, what kind of environment
So I grew up, first of all, it's good to see a full room for this luncheon. This is an important program. You know, I do a lot of work in my job today trying to make sure that we get as many people interested in economics and finance as possible, because the more people you have, the more perspectives that are represented, the better the conversations, the more robust they are, and you wind up focusing on the right things in the right way, so we get solutions that can work for everyone. So really happy to see this, and APAM should be congratulated for continuing this now for almost a decade, which is very exciting. So I grew up in Delran, New Jersey, which is a small town. It's like a bedroom community outside of Philadelphia, and my parents wanted to move us to a suburban place. Really, my mom wanted to find a good school system where we would get good education, and she did that. And the thing that was interesting, growing up, my great aunt was a school principal, and so education was always something that we were told that you have to invest in, you have to strive, you have to excel in. And also, you should strive to be better than 100%. You should always be trying to really make your mark as someone who is an achiever and trying to really get everything you can out of the educational enterprise. And so they pushed us pretty hard. My mother was the cruelest editor. Like, you think journal editors are bad? You have not seen anything till you see the red ink on something from my mom. So I went to Harvard undergrad. I wound up being a psychology and economics major. I worked for a government consultant firm, then went back to school to get a PhD at Stanford in economics. That's where I met Karen. We did have a lot of fun on campus. We'll save that that'll be cocktail party stuff later on. But it was great. So for me in grad school, I actually hated grad school. It was a terrible experience. I quit multiple times, was talked off the ledge, because graduate school is hard. And it's the first time where you're transitioning from being just a learner and absorber to a creator. And creation is not an easy enterprise. And when you get to these kind of conferences, oftentimes you're seeing papers, that's the culmination of creation. The journey to get here is never easy, and it's a challenge. And so much of it is, you had an idea, it didn't work, you fail, and then you have to face that failure and not let the failure defeat you, but have it be something that becomes a foundation for moving forward. That journey to come to grips with that was hard for me. And so we went through, I will say I was fortunate. I had a number of faculty members in the Stanford Econ department, and then John Quigley, who was at Berkeley, who really just anytime I was about at the edge, one of them would show up and like talk me back and say, no, you really can do this. And the thing that they taught me was that I was responsible for everything, and that I had to make sure that I was clear on what I was hoping to get out of grad school, and then take all the steps necessary to just get that, and not let an existing structure or the goals or desires of my peers and colleagues define what I should be doing. I need to do that on my own. And that's something I really have carried moving forward, to make sure that I always work on the things that I actually care about, that I have passion on. We're going to do it the best you can, but it's got to be my space. And for all of you, that's what I would say. Just try to find your spaces as you move forward. And then if you live in that space and you strive on it, I tell young people all the time, if you can work in your passion spaces, you will do better. Because every job has non-sexy parts of it. Every job has places where it's going to be the hard thing. And if you're passionate about it, you'll push through harder than if you're not. And if you're passionate about it, that pushing will get you to a much better place than otherwise. So really be thoughtful about who you are and how you live and how you seek out your work. And I've really tried to do that moving forward. Then, I worked at the board, the board of governors for the Fed as a research economist coming out. got lucky there, worked with a team that allowed me to get a foothold in housing and mortgage lending and credit scoring and bank branching patterns, which then became a foundation for pretty much everything else I've done. So I worked on Fannie and Freddie, went to USC, went to HUD to try to help be part of a solution in the housing crisis. And over the course of all those things, I just got a bunch of skills that kind of added up to being able to be a president at a reserve bank. As I was getting the skills, I wasn't doing it with that in mind, but it kind of worked out that way. So the headhunter said, put your hat in the ring. I threw my hat in the ring and they picked me. That was actually the most shocking day of my life. Like when they offered me the job, I'm grateful that I had actually pulled over the car. I was in LA. I was driving to work. I saw this 404 number. Like, let me pull over, because I would have crashed the car if I had done what Angelenos usually do, which is, you answer it and you're staying in the commute. But it's been great. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's amazing. It's really good to hear you reflect on, how, the experiences, growing up and your mom's influence and then all the support that you had in grad school. I'm curious, what sparked your interest in economics? Why were you excited, or were you excited?
That's a funny
Can
thing,
you
too.
guys hear me?
So when I got to my freshman year in college,
I took a bit
I'm
more
a
off
great
when we came back
mechanical
over
engineer.
8 just because there was a chance we might
I'd
not
never
get to
taken any
highs.
class. I didn't
But I
really
covered
think
in
about
full
it
when they
very
broke
much.
back this range at
First
314,
semester I was
315.
in
Okay,
a
because I knew that
class
318 failing
and,
here
some
implied
things
really
happened to
heavy
make it
risk.
clear
This
that
was
that
a
wasn't
very
what my
calculated
future
time, and you
should
see
be.
how
And so
this stick
I
brought us
decided
back
to
into
go
this
find
neutral
something
zone.
else to do.
I don't really want to be in
And the
this
first class
area.
I took was a psychology
That
class.
being said,
But
they
you
could
know,
hold
when you
off
go-
660, 59 and
let's
still
say it
get
like
this
this.
back to this area,
One of
but
the things
now
I've
it could
learned is
become a pinnable
whenever I
close.
have
So I just,
expectations for the long
personally
arc,
speaking,
they never play
I'm
out
happy
that way.
with my trades today,
And
so I
I've
didn't
just
really
learned to
care
just be
to
open to
carry
the,
this
you don't know
through,
what
right,
opportunities
into
are going
this
to
area
present
here.
themselves. And so I took this psych class, and I found out I really liked it. And this is where I was
But
talking
I'll
about
still stream the
staying in
rest of the
passion
session.
spaces. So I just started taking more psych, and then I took an econ class. I liked that too. And it was really, I took that class because it was Ec 10 at Harvard, which is like the biggest intro class on campus. And pretty much everyone takes it, and I liked it. So I did some psych, I did some econ, did some psych, and wound up creating my own combined major of psychology and economics, which is the degree that I got coming out of Harvard. So it was kind of dumb luck, but just paying attention to what was interesting.
I mean, I think that's often how it happens. When I started college, I was pre-med and was convinced I was going to be a doctor. And I took a psychology class and was like, oh, this is great. So there you go. What about public service? What got you excited about going into public service?
Public service, that's an interesting question. Look, I think there are lots of different ways to do public service. Let me start at a high level. For me, I've always been curious about why places grow and how places thrive.
Actually,
and when you start,
hold on, let me pause him
I
for a
started
second.
asking those questions. What I realized,
I think
Selling
maybe
your house in Calgary.
maybe I'll end my session early then. I don't know. I feel like if they really wanted to break range, they would have had to have cleared around that 301, 305, at least sustained 7778, and then retracted off that 314, 15 sticks, right? Like back to this area in here. So I knew as soon as they took it back beneath here and then broke this range in here that we're probably now pinnable into the close. Pinnable can mean anywhere in between these areas, guys. 6744, 6738, 6758, 6760, 6772, 6778, 6779, 6784, 6788. Does that make sense? They really reduced odds of getting those cleared breaks over 9599. We do have some odds for like very late in the session, like around 348, 352. So if they hold this area here, which is basically this 675859, then we probably have some odds of at least getting back to this area here. But I would say that range is probably limited now on the session today. So I'm probably gonna call it a day. So try not to get chopped up into this last half, because these ranges could definitely imply that. I don't know, I guess it depends on what your definition of puke is. The orange area is something I would consider, like, you'd be playing with fire in this area here, but I mean, I guess if you went back to like 4-4, 3-8, yeah, technically. So, but I would have taken short hedges off of 8-8 or 8 or 7-8 or 8-4 versus here. Do you know what I'm saying? Because this is also an area that they could take it right back up, and they could also break around the 330, 332 imbalance period here. Plus, we have some odds, like I said, that are kind of late around like 340, 348, 352. So they could hold here and then bring it back. So if you're shorting, you better be shorting off of the 80s or like upper 70s. Don't be an idiot and short here. Like, in the nicest way possible. Because if they want to make this a pinnable session, then they would hold 5-8, 5-9. I would prefer that they pin above 6-6, ideally over 7-8 today. They don't necessarily have to pin the zone, but the best case scenario would basically be to just end the week flat, right? Like just doji on the week or something, and reset us for next week again, since we have odds from the 17th through the 24th. Yeah, you just have to kind of be mindful in these areas. I mean, if you short here, I mean, I guess maybe off like a failure of 7-1, 7-2, but just be very careful unless you have a long position here too. Do you know what I'm saying? These aren't really ranges that, unless you're shorting off of here, okay, your risk down here is pretty high, okay, because they can easily retract this right back to these areas here. I would at least see if they try taking it back over 7-2, 7-4, especially by this 3-6 mark, because if they get it back into this box here, okay, or back to this 318 stick where the volatility started to begin with, then it would just become a pinnable session. Both sides would get killed. Does that make sense? Usually if I sign off early, it's because I see a limitation on both ends of the trade. So, and we already caught the move from literally 6, 7, 88 all the way through, so it doesn't really, I don't really care what they do here. Personally speaking, I don't really care. If they pin this above 5-8, that's great. If they pin this closer to 4-4, I know that we have some thinking to do. If they pin this above 7-8, 7-9, great. If they take this back to 6, 7, 8, 8, even better. If they keep it stuck in this area here, that's going to imply some volatility heading into next week, right? I only had 2 contracts left from this area here anyway, so I took the one off at the 8-8 retest, and I said I would leave one just in case they come back to take out highs, but I didn't like how they stalled here. Anyway. That being said, there could be some end of day trades if they want to pin closer to 8-8, okay? But at the very least, you'd have to probably get out of this zone area here by like 336, 340, ideally before 345. There were some nice setups on like the 20-minute too that you could keep using for end of session today, but I don't know. I just wouldn't over trade this. We also moved almost 128 points off lows, so I'm factoring in that they could just keep recycling ranges now down here. But ideally speaking, though, we do want it back over 6, 7, 7, 8, okay? That would still be the better area to bring it to, but they did leave some risk beneath, though. And I think off these lower highs, they already took this 28 points, so technically speaking, there still is some room if they want to bring it a bit lower. But if they wanted to hold here and extend higher, at the very least, you need a 12-point break. That's probably the 318 stick, okay? And that would take you back over that 7-4. And then you would probably look for at least 17 points back over 7-7, 7-8. So 17 points at least gives you a decent odd, but I don't know. I'm not gonna trade the last half, personally. So some of the better odds end of day though were super late. 352 I would watch for today. 348. And then always 354, 355 just for odds. I mean, it's not that crazy. Like, if they can put this back at least over here, then... But I feel like if they wanted to do that, they wouldn't have broken down off that 314, 316, 318. You know what I mean? So this, to me, looks a bit more pinnable. But because they have those odds end of day, then maybe. And plus, we also have Fed on, which is obviously a disadvantage. Do you know what I mean? So... Okay, I'm going to sign off, guys, for the weekend. I hope everyone had a good day. Hopefully you guys caught the big long trade off those lows all the way back to 6788. It was a huge trade. They did reduce range here when they reduced it by like 33 to 34 points, which is what prevented us from getting up to like the 3820s. That being said, I think we still have some decent odds into next week if they pin us at core areas. So 6770, 6780s are linked to 6820s and 6830s anyway, so that would be the better area to close. Closing in the means would imply some volatility. We do have very big flips next week, so the 17th is a multi-flip structure, so we might want to start seeing if we can maybe negate some of these. Okay, go into a negation period. It is OPEX next week too. The big concern that I had was this 4-day structure, so I'm really glad we didn't take out the lows, so this can try invalidating this, okay? That being said, that's why it would have been a bit better if they were able to get it back to 6,800. Do you see that? So I don't know if they have the energy to push very late day, but they probably will because I'm going to sign off early. But if they did, it would basically try negating this structure here, and based on a supply and demand theory, this would kind of just like take it back to like a midpoint. Okay, and this is what would keep us basically sideways at least for another week or a few days. Does that make sense? But they unfortunately stalled so far, so I don't know, that they'd have to really push if they want to try getting it back to these areas by end of day. But they didn't take out the lows, which is good. 7-day also flips on the 21st. 8-day flips on the 21st. 9-day flips on the 24th. 10-day flips Monday. That one did take out the lows, so 11-day flips Monday. There's a lot of multi-flips on Monday, so it's just something to kind of watch for along with the 21st, okay? So today's the last trading session for a lot of these candles, if that makes sense. Same with the, I think it was the 4-day. Yeah, 4-day, 2-day. And then obviously the 5-day, which is the same thing as the weekly. Okay? No problem. I will see you guys on probably Sunday if I decide to do like a Sunday futures opening stream or something. But anyway. We still have risk down to this area here if anyone did try some shorts. The worst case scenario would be if they brought this back to 6720s. That would be the worst case. Hopefully they can at least try holding 6744. I feel like that's that 6738 to 44. I don't really want to go much lower than that there. Like that would probably be the most ideal area if they break this 5758 range. Okay, 5850 is the calculated area from today's real-time session. So maybe look to see if they can hold that before the final 15. Otherwise, like I said, the 52, 55, 44, these areas are back in play, and it could just end up becoming compressed range there until they decide where they want to nest this. Also, nesting back in the channel isn't necessarily the worst case scenario if they're undecided on what they want to do here. But anything in here would be better. Anything in here is going to impose some